Posh. What a good word. The word posh is used very frequently in the UK to describe things that have a bit more of an upper class value, a higher upmarket value than other things possibly. Or if you see a guy being a bit of a twat and he comes from a bit of a nice background, he's a bit of a posh twat. The word posh has a lot of good meanings to it. I'd feel like the word rich, the word wealthy, affluent, that's not really posh. Posh is its own thing. And what's surprising is, with as good a word as posh is, it doesn't exist at all in the USA, which is why it came up naturally in the video I made a couple weeks ago with my mom, where I was teaching her some British words that I use all the time and quizzing her on them, and she did get that one correct. But because the word posh did come up in that video, I did get quite a few comments of people trying to tell me the interesting history of the word posh. And boy, oh boy, humans really love an interesting story. And so, for you, I'm going to tell you this interesting story of the word posh and its origins. You see, as I did say, the word posh means upper class, and the upper class in society back in the 19th century, 20th century, they used to like going on cruises. Well, the English did at least, to India. However, if you've got all this money and you want to have the nicest cabin because you're just a really rich person, you wouldn't want to get the cabin that's hot in the evening with the evening sun. No, because then you go to sleep hot. You want the nicest possible cabin, and so you ensure that you are on the port side on the way to India, sun is rising, nice warmth in the morning, and then you're on the starboard side on the way home, so that way the sun is then rising in the other direction. Very convenient. You basically don't sleep hot. That's how much money you have. And this was such a good system that the cruise liners had that when someone was rich enough and they were like, oh, this person, they're quite posh, they would stamp posh right on their ticket. That way they would know it's port out and starboard home. Except none of which what I have just said is proven by anyone anywhere and is pretty much just a really cool story and or urban legend. However, this is one of those stories that's so interesting and such a cool reason on why we use the word posh, where it comes from, that it just gets parroted online quite a lot as, oh, did you know? It's not true, sadly, or at least we haven't found a way to prove it yet. In fact, to date, no one has ever actually found a single ticket stamped by any cruise liner that has the word posh on it. In fact, if you think about it, logistically, why would anyone need to stamp posh on the ticket? The cabin is right there, and the cabin is going to be the good cabin, so you don't have to put posh on it. You don't have to be like, yeah, they're getting starboard on the way home. We know that's the other cabin. So it kind of doesn't logically make sense, but like I said, it is a very interesting story, which makes posh, one of my favorite linguistic terms, a backronym. Backronym being a portmanteau of back and acronym. An acronym made in the past, retrospectively. You might know a lot of them based on sailing words, but there's also one that I remember growing up with in the States in school I'm going to go over as well. So if we're talking about some sailing ones, one that we all know as a backronym, SOS means someone help me. At least that's what the song said. Well, SOS, as we all know, save our ship, save our souls. Except that is what it's understood to mean, but this has been a value generated afterwards, hence the backronym. Originally, SOS was just the easiest way of signaling to someone via Morse code that you were having problems, as in S, 3 dots, O, 3 dashes, S, 3 dots. It's really hard to confuse that with any other symbol, and it's also very, very fast. 3 dots, just 3 dashes, 3 dots, boom, ba boom, 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 ba boom. Easy. I could be a Morse code. However, we as humans were like, SOS, oh, you know what? That makes sense. Save our ship. And it just stuck and it caught on. Everyone's favorite backronym. Another one at sea you might hear if you're sailing around the English Channel, or anywhere really, you might hear pan, pan. Now, if you're having a huge emergency at sea and you're like, we're gonna have some loss of life, you bring out the SOS, okay? You want your ship to be saved. However, when you might have just a breakdown or possible assistance needed, you yell out pan, pan. Except, yet again, this is a video about backronyms. Pan actually comes from the French, pan. They're always shouting about their bread. Or rather, it's pan. Listen, I'm learning French. I'm not learning French. I'm learning German, I'm learning Spanish. So pana is the French word for breakdown. So primarily, this is just an assumption that I believe the English had heard French people wailing about their breakdowns. We're like, pun, 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 pun. And eventually, that has become what we all say now at sea when you're experiencing something where you're like, I mean, you don't have to rush to get to me. I did have a breakdown, but like no one's dying yet. But like, I would like some possible assistance. Hence why saying possible assistance needed makes so much sense. Now, in terms of the one that I'd said I used a lot in school, not that I used it, but I'd heard it a lot. There's a very popular sports brand made in Germany from the guy named Adi Dassler, and you know, Adidas. However, as an American, you don't really know much German, and Adidas is a bit hard to pronounce, and you're like, where did that come from? Couldn't be from someone's name. I bet it's an acronym, and the one that passed around my school was All Day I Dream About Soccer. Now, that one doesn't really work too well in the UK, where they would say football, and Adidaf doesn't have the same ring to it. But I believe I've also heard here, all day I dream about sport, which makes a lot of sense because for some reason Brits do not pluralize sport. They make the whole argument about, it's maths, multiple maths, and yet with sport, you know what I'm saying? However, I have heard the lewd argument made, all day I dream about sex, but I hope to God not, you're in school. And speaking of school, one final little backronym I'll teach you is one based on the thing that every American has to go through in 5th grade, the DARE program. DARE is already our word, you know what DARE means, but why don't we backronym it so it's D, I won't do drugs, A, won't have an attitude, R, I will respect myself, E, I will educate me now. Yes, I had to sing an entire song about the drug abuse resistance education program in the 5th grade to my parents and the whole class. I still remember the whole song. And that really helped stop the war on drugs. Teach kids all drugs will kill you and all drugs are bad. So one day if they do try MDMA or marijuana, they'll go, oh, I guess the harder ones are also been lied about, and then something bad happens. Good drug education, DARE, a good backronym. Hope you've enjoyed this bit of a one-take video about backronyms. There we go, there's a cut. Didn't expect this to be a one-take video in the end anyway. I just got everything I wanted to say, except I wanted to make one extra point. As I said, SOS was used primarily because it's very hard to confuse that with any other signal with Morse code. And that's why, for emergencies, we have things like 911 in the States. You know, that specifically is used for emergency services. But I do find it just a little odd that the emergency services number in the UK, if you don't know, is 999. Only because as much as that's actually way more convenient, and that's definitely more of the SOS pattern, it's easier to butt dial that, right? Am I right? I'm just throwing it out there. I feel like maybe the IT crowd number makes more sense. No, I have been watching IT crowd. But 999 I feel like is way easier to accidentally dial as opposed to 911. So I don't know, I still prefer that one. However, as an extra fun fact, if I do in the UK forget because I'm in an emergency, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just instinctively go to 911, it does reroute to 999 because I'm in the UK. So that's fun. Also, as a quick tidbit, if you are for some reason calling 911 and not 999 within the UK, you only will be transferred if you are actually calling from within the UK and on a UK mobile network. So just use the number appropriate for emergencies based on where you are. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for all the kind words on the video I made with my mother the other day. Thank you very much. Also to the people that did leave me the comment about Posh. Thank you, because I was going to make this video anyway, but the amount of people spreading that story, which is a very interesting story, but spreading it verbatim just made me go like, I got it. I just, by like the 20th time, I was just like, why? I think it's a thing that is not very relatable unless you're like a creator type person, because if one person says to you something on the street and you disagree with them, that's fine. But if you have 25 people posting the same story to you going like, did you know this thing that's not true? And you're like, maybe that's just me. It's also very hot in London for the first time this summer. So I'm boiling. Anyway, I hope you've been enjoying all the new stuff I've been making recently. If you haven't seen the video I did with my mom, I'd be surprised. It's my most viewed video I've ever uploaded within the short time frame it's been up. So you could watch that. Oh, again, I don't know, thanks. I'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye.